The wooden pew creaked under my weight as the organ swelled, but it was his knees hitting the floor that shattered the silence in my soul. In that back row of street, Mary's, hidden from the judgmental eyes of Willow Creek, he knelt not in reverence to the cross above, but in a surrender that mirrored my own buried secrets. Zachary Hale, 24, and unraveling. I couldn't tear my gaze away. In that instant, as his dark curls caught the flickering candlelight, I knew my heart had found its thief, and it would never forgive the theft. The summer of 2015 in Willow Creek, Ohio, clung to us like humidity-thick regret, the kind that soaks through your shirt and leaves you gasping for air you can't quite reach. I was Zachary Hale, the boy who'd grown up in the shadow of the Hale family farm, where cornfields stretched like endless accusations under the relentless Midwest sun. My father, Tom, was a man carved from the same unyielding earth broad-shouldered, calloused hands that fixed tractors before dawn and quoted psalms at supper like they were the only truth worth spitting out. Mom, Ellen, softer but no less devout, baked pies for church potlucks and whispered prayers for my wayward soul long before I even knew what that meant. At 24, I was the prodigal son who hadn't run far enough, back from a failed semester at Ohio State, tail between my legs, working the fields and fixing fences, my degree in literature gathering dust like my dreams. Church was the weekly ritual, the one place where Willow Creek pretended its fractures didn't show. Street, Mary's Episcopal, with its peeling white steeple and creaky oak doors, was the heart of it all, where Pastor Reynolds droned on about forgiveness while the congregation nodded, their sins tucked neatly under starched collars. I sat in the back row every Sunday, not out of piety, but because it was the farthest from the front where Dad's stern profile loomed like a sentinel. That pew had become my confessional, the one spot where I could steal glances at the world beyond the stained glass, wondering if there was a city out there where a boy like me didn't have to swallow his own heartbeat. It was July 12th, the pews packed for the annual harvest prayer service, the air thick with the scent of polished wood and wilting lilies. I'd arrived late, slipping in just as the choir hit the high note on Amazing Grace, my boots still caked with morning mud. The back row was my sanctuary, empty as always until it wasn't. He was there, already settled at the far end, his frame lean and unassuming in a faded gray hoodie that hung loose on shoulders that spoke of quiet strength. I didn't know his name then, but something about the way he hunched forward, elbows on knees, fingers interlaced like he was holding back a storm, pulled at me. His hair was a mess of dark waves, falling over a forehead creased with thoughts too heavy for a Sunday morning. He couldn't have been more than 25, maybe 26, with skin tanned from hours under an unforgiving sun. And eyes, God, those eyes, deep brown pools that flicked up just once, catching mine in the dim light, before dropping back to the floor. I slid in beside him, careful not to brush arms, my pulse thundering louder than the hymns. Who was he? Willow Creek wasn't big enough for strangers. We'd all grown up trading Easter eggs and 4th of July barbecues, our lives intertwined like the roots under those cornstalks. But this manha was a ghost in our midst, kneeling now as the pastor called for silent reflection, his knees pressing into the worn runner with a devotion that felt profane in its intensity. Not to the altar, I realized with a jolt, but inward, as if bargaining with demons only he could see. My breath hitched. In that kneel, I saw my own reflection, the boy who'd spent nights in the barn loft, fists clenched against the ache of wanting what the Bible called abomination, what Dad called weakness, what I called myself in the mirror until the word lost its edges. The service dragged on, Pastor Reynolds weaving tales of redemption that landed like stones in my gut. The Lord sees your hidden burdens, brothers and sisters, he intoned, his voice booming off the vaulted ceiling. He kneels with you in the darkness. I risked another glance, And there it was, his lips moving in silent plea, shoulders trembling just enough to betray the war inside. Who breaks like that in public? Who lets the mask slip in a place like this? My fingers itched to reach out, to steady him, but I gripped the hymnal instead, knuckles white, heart slamming against ribs like it wanted to escape and confess for us both. When the final amen echoed, the congregation stirred like a hive disturbed, filing out into the sticky heat where potluck tables groaned under fried chicken and Jell-O salads. I lingered, pretending to fumble with my Bible, watching as he rose slowly, brushing dust from his jeans with hands that shook. Up close, he was even more striking, high cheekbones shadowed by stubble, a faint scar slicing through one eyebrow like a punctuation mark on a life of close calls. He nodded at me, a ghost of a smile tugging his lips, before turning toward the side door. "See you next week," I blurted, the words tumbling out before sanity could reel them back. He paused, hand on the latch, those brown eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that stripped me bare. "If the Lord wills it," he said, voice low and rough, laced with an accent that hinted at hills farther south Appalachia. Maybe. Or the Carolinas. Then he was gone, vanishing into the parking lot where gravel crunched under retreating tires. I stood there, the church emptying around me, feeling like I'd just survived a shipwreck. Who was he? And why did one kneel feel like the first crack in the dam holding back my entire world? That night, sleep evaded me like a guilty secret. The farmhouse creaked under a thunderstorm, rain lashing the windows as lightning forked across the sky, illuminating the posters on my childhood walls, faded baseball heroes and Bible verses Mom had tacked up years ago. I tossed in sheets twisted with frustration, replaying the moment, his knees folding, the vulnerability raw as an open wound. It wasn't just attraction. It was recognition, the kind that whispers, "You're not alone in this hell." I'd hidden my truth since high school, when a fumbling kiss with Tommy Whitaker behind the bleachers had ended in tears and a vow of silence. Willow Creek didn't raise boys who loved boys. It raised men who married the girl next door, popped out kids, and died praising Jesus. I dated Sarah Jenkins for a summer. Her laughter sweet, but her touch like sandpaper on my skin. Broke it off gently. Blamed the farm. But the guilt festered, a poison seeping into every prayer. By dawn, resolve hardened in me like frost on the fields. I'd find out who he was. Willow Creek thrived on gossip. Surely someone knew the newcomer haunting our pews. Breakfast was the usual tableau, Dad at the head, fork spearing eggs with mechanical precision, Mom fluttering like a worried hen, refilling coffee mugs. "Pass the salt, Zach," Dad grunted, eyes on the paper's AG report. I complied, words sticking in my throat. How do you ask about a stranger without sounding like you've lost your mind? It came later, in the hardware store where I picked up fence wire under the fluorescent bus. Old Mr. Hargrove, who'd farmed these parts since Eisenhower, leaned on the counter, chewing the fat with Mrs. Delaney from the choir. "Heard we got a new face at church," she said, voice pitched for drama. Elias Grant moved in last month, renting the old Miller place out on Route 9. Elias. The name settled in my chest like a stone polished smooth. "What's his story?" I asked, feigning casual as I tested a coil of wire. Hargrove snorted. "Ex-Marine. They say. Saw action in Afghanistan. Came back all shot up inside. Works odd jobs, fixes cars at the garage. Helps with harvests when he can. Keeps to himself. Though. Folks whisper he's running from something dark." Mrs. Delaney clucked her tongue. "Pastor says he's seeking the light. Pray for him. Zachary. The devil's got a hold on wanderers like that." I nodded, murmuring agreement. But inside, fire licked at my veins. Elias Grant, a name that tasted like forbidden fruit. By evening, I was in my truck, the old Ford rumbling down Route 9 as fireflies danced in the dusk. The Miller place was a sagging Victorian, paint peeling like old skin, porch light flickering against encroaching woods. His truck, a battered blue Chevy, was parked crooked in the drive. Hood up, tools scattered like battlefield debris. I killed the engine, heart hammering, and stepped out into the chorus of crickets. He emerged from under the hood, wiping grease on a rag, surprise etching his features. Up close, without the church's halo, he was rugged poetry, faded tattoo peeking from his sleevia compass rose. Thorns entwined in eyes that held storms I'd only read about in books. Zachary. Right. His voice wrapped around my name like smoke. Warm and knowing. Yeah. Couldn't stay away. The words hung bold. Reckless. He chuckled. Low and genuine. Setting the rag aside. Fixing this beast. She's got a mind of her own. He gestured to the engine, but his gaze lingered, appraising. We talked then easy at first. About the farm, the relentless rain, the way Willow Creek chewed up dreams and spat out dust. He shared fragments, grew up in the hollers of West Virginia, enlisted at 18 to escape a father with a bottle and a belt. Afghanistan had taken pieces of Hema leg that ached in the damp. Nights haunted by sand and screams. Church seemed like as good a place as any to start piecing it back, he said, leaning against the fender, arms crossed like a barrier he wanted breached. I wanted to tell him then about the nights I'd lain awake. Bible open to Leviticus, hating the boy it condemned. About the ache that bloomed when I saw men like him, strong and unbroken on the outside. But words failed. So I offered instead, beer on the porch. I've got a six-pack in the truck. He hesitated, then nodded, that scar quirking with his smile. We sat under the stars, bottles sweating in our hands, the world narrowing to the space between us. Stories flowed like the creek after a storm, his about patrols under moonless skies. Mine about stolen moments in college libraries, devouring Whitman and wondering if leaves of grass could love like I did. Laughter came unexpected, easing the tension, until his knee brushed mine. Accidental. Electric. Neither pulled away. As the night deepened, he set his bottle down, voice dropping to a gravel whisper. You ever feel like you're kneeling in the wrong church? Zach. Praying to a God who might not even hear. My throat tightened, the hook sinking deeper. Every damn day. In that admission, the dam cracked further, and when his hand found mine rough, warm, unyielding, I didn't flinch. We didn't kiss. Not yet. It was enough to sit there, fingers laced, two outcasts forging a fragile bridge over the abyss. But Willow Creek watched, and secrets like ours had a way of unraveling under its unblinking eye. The weeks blurred into a stolen rhythm, each Sunday a sacrament of glances and whispered plans. Elias became my compass, pointing toward horizons I'd only dreamed of. We'd meet after services, slipping away to the old quarry on the edge of town, where rusted machinery loomed like forgotten gods and the water below mirrored skies unmarred by judgment. There, under the weeping willows, we'd shed our skins, his hoodie discarded, revealing the map of scars across his back. Souvenirs from IEDs and shrapnel. My flannel unbuttoned, bearing the farm boy build honed by hay bales and heartache. Our first real kiss happened on a Tuesday. Rain sheeting the quarry's cliffs. Thunder rumbling like divine disapproval. We'd hike down slick paths, laughing at near slips, until shelter under an overhang forced us close. This is crazy, I murmured, his breath ghosting my neck, hands framing my face with a gentleness that belied his soldier's grip. Crazy's better than numb, he replied, and then his lips were on mine, tentative at first. Testing. then fierce, like he'd been starving for this language all his life. It tasted of beer and desperation, of cornfields and foxholes. And in that clash, I found absolution. We tumbled to the damp earth, clothes a tangle of urgency, exploring bodies that fit like puzzle pieces long separated. His touch mapped my hesitations, coaxing out moans I'd silenced for years. Mine traced his wounds, turning pain into poetry. It wasn't just sex, it was rebellion. A quiet fuck you to the verses that had chained us. But bliss is a fragile thing in Willow Creek. Whispers started mid-August, slithering through the diner and the feed store like kudzu. Saw Hale's boy with that Grant fellow awful chummy. Mrs. Delaney hissed over coffee, her cross necklace glinting like a warning. Dad's brow furrowed deeper at supper. His silence is heavier than the humid air. You pulling your weight out there, son? He'd ask, eyes boring into me as if he could unearth the truth with a glare. I doubled down on the farm. Dawn to dusk labor to drown the guilt. But Elias was a fever I couldn't sweat out. We'd steal hours in his rented house. The Victorian's creaky floors our confessional, where he'd read me letters from his sister back home, tales of mountain life, laced with her pleas for him to find peace. I'd counter with dog-eared paperbacks. Forster's Maurice passed hand to hand like contraband, its pages dog-eared at lines about love that defied empires. This could be us, I'd say, tracing his jaw, if we run far enough. He'd pull me close, voice muffled against my shoulder. Running's what got me here, Zach. Halfway houses and bottle bottoms. Maybe it's time to stand. Stand. The word haunted me as fall crept in, leaves turning blood red under skies that promised frost. Elias started attending Bible study midweek, his kneel in the back row evolving into questions that ruffled Pastor Reynolds' feathers. What about David and Jonathan? He'd ask, voice steady, eyes daring the room. Wasn't their love deeper than brothers? The group shifted uncomfortably, murmurs of context and interpretation filling the air like smoke. I watched from the fringes, pride swelling even as fear gnawed. Dad cornered me one harvest eve, pitchfork in hand, the barn reeking of hay and sweat. What's eating at you, boy? You've been jumpy as a cat in a hailstorm. His eyes, so like mine, searched for lies. Nothing, Dad. Just thinking about the future. The half-truth burned, but it bought time. Then came the storm, the real one, not the metaphorical kind. October 3rd, homecoming weekend, when Willow Creek swelled with alumni and illusions of innocence. Elias and I had planned to skip the dance, holing up at the quarry with a blanket and bourbon. But fate, that cruel puppeteer, had other scripts. I was roped into helping with setup at the high school gym, stringing lights, hauling tables when Tommy Whitaker, now a deputy with a beer gut and a badge, clapped my shoulder too hard. Heard you're thick as thieves with the vet. Grant. Right. Oddbird. Folks say he's, you know, one of those. The word hung venomous. I shrugged it off, but the seed was planted. By nightfall, as the gym pulsed with bad country covers and punch spiked with regret, Dad pulled me aside in the parking lot, his face thunderous. Pastor called. Said Elias stirred trouble in study, talking abominations. And you've been seen with him. What's going on, Zachary? The world tilted, the bass from inside thumping like an accusation. It's not, I started, but the lie died on my tongue. Elias appeared then, weaving through the crowd, spilling out, his face alight with that rare, unguarded smile. He froze at the sight of us, the air crackling. Mr. Hale, he said, extending a hand, steady as rebar. Dad ignored it. eyes flicking between us like he was piecing a puzzle he wished broken. "Son," Dad growled at me. "We're leaving. Now." I followed, numb. The truck's tires spitting gravel as we tore home. The reckoning came in the kitchen. Mom wringing her apron. Dad pacing like a caged bull. "Is it true? That filth?" His voice cracked. The first fracture in his armor. Tears stung. Hot and unbidden. "I love him. Dad. It's not filth, it's me." The confession ripped free. Raw as a wound reopened. Silence swallowed us. Then Mom's sob. Dad's fist slamming the table. "The Bible. Screw the Bible." I shouted, the blasphemy echoing. "It doesn't say a damn thing about this ache. This joy. Elias sees me. Dad. All of me." He deflated then, shoulders sagging under years of unyielding faith. "You're breaking your mother's heart. Breaking mine." But in his eyes, flicker of something new, not acceptance, but a crack, a kneel of his own. Elias waited in the drive, truck idling, ready to bolt if I said the word. I climbed in beside him, the cab a cocoon against the night. "They know," I whispered, head on his shoulder. He started the engine, hand squeezing mine. "Then we fight. Or we run. Your call." We didn't run out that night. Instead, we drove to the church. The back row empty under moonlight slanting through windows like judgment deferred. He knelt again, pulling me down with him, our foreheads touching in the dust. "Pray with me," he murmured. Not to him, but to us. And in that profane pew, with Willow Creek sleeping unaware, we did vows whispered against skin, promises forged in the fire of what we dared to claim. Love, in all its messy glory, wasn't redemption. It was revolution. Winter clamped down on Willow Creek like a vice, snow blanketing the fields in deceptive purity. But the heat between Elias and me burned fiercer, a defiance against the cold. We'd carved out pockets of normalcy mornings tangled in his sheets, the Victorian's radiator hissing like a conspirator. Afternoons at the garage where he'd teach me to wrench engines, grease-streaked fingers brushing in ways that made customers avert their eyes. Sundays remained our anchor, the back row of front line where we'd sit shoulder to shoulder, his pinky hooking mine under the hymnal, a Morse code of solidarity. But fractures widen. Dad's silences turned to sermons at the table, subtle at first, then barbed. "The harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few." He'd quote, eyes on me as I pushed peas around my plate. Mom tried bridging, leaving Elias' favorite cornbread on the porch with notes in her looping script. "The Lord loves a contrite heart." It was her way of kneeling, and it softened something in me, a reminder that grace could flow both ways. Elias, though his wars raged internal, nightmares jerked him awake, sweat-soaked and gasping. My arms his only tether. Sand in my throat. He'd mutter, clutching me like flotsam. I'd hold him through the shakes, humming old hymns until dawn, wondering if love could cauterize ghosts. His questions in Bible study escalated, drawing lines in the sand. If God is love, why does he hate so many of his children? Pastor Reynolds blustered, the group splintering, some nodding furtively, others crossing themselves and fleeing. The backlash crested in November, a town hall disguised as a prayer vigil for family values. Flyers blanketed the diner, "Protect our youth from moral decay." I spotted one fluttering under my wiper, the words twisting like a knife. Elias laughed it off over diner pie, but his eyes were haunted. "They're scared, Zach, of what we represent. Hope. Maybe." That night, Tommy Whitaker pulled us over on a back road, taillights flashing like accusations. "Routine check," he drawled, breath sour with whiskey, but his gaze raked Elias with predatory gleam. Heard you're corrupting the Hale boy. Best watch your step. Soldier. Elias' jaw tightened, hand flexing on the wheel. We're just driving. Deputy. Mind your own road. Tommy leaned in, close enough for spittle to fleck the window. This town's got rules. Break him, and you'll wish for desert sand. He sauntered back to his cruiser, leaving us shaken, the air thick with unspoken flight. I confronted Dad the next dawn, storming the barn where he forked hay like it owed him blood. It's getting ugly. Dad. Tommy Every and Effie Reese circling. He paused, pitchfork hovering, sweat beading on his brow. I told Pastor to call it off. Said enough's enough. The admission hung. A olive branch extended through gritted teeth. You defended us. My voice cracked, disbelief warring with gratitude. Not for him, Dad muttered, but his eyes softened. For you, son. You're Hale blood, and blood don't break easy. It was the closest to absolution we'd get. A kneel in overalls. Mom echoed it later, pressing a quilt into my arms, her own stitching, threads of blue and gold weaving through the patches. Wrap him in this. Tell him it's from all of us. Elias unfolded it that evening, fingers tracing the seams, tears carving tracks down his cheeks. Your family's got more grace than mine ever did. We made love then, slow and reverent, the quilt a tent against the world. Our body's a litany of I see you. I choose you. Thanksgiving brought uneasy truce. Dad invited Elias grudgingly, over turkey carved with deliberate strokes. Conversation skirted edges, weather, football, the farm's yield. But when Elias mentioned his sister's letter, a baby on the way, Mom's eyes lit with maternal fire. A new life miracle. That. Dad grunted assent, passing the gravy. And in that small gesture, Willow Creek's walls trembled. Yet storms brew in calms. December's chill ushered Elias Ghost's homie a letter from his CO, inviting him to a Veterans Memorial in D.C. to honor the fallen. It read, but between lines lurked the pull of old battles, the camaraderie of men who understood sand in their souls. He paced the porch, cigarette glowing like a distress signal. What if I go? Zach. What if it drags me under again? Then I go with you, I said, pulling him inside, our breaths mingling in the lamplight. We're in this trench together. He left for 3 days, the house echoing with absence. I filled time with farm chores, Dad's quiet company thawing into talks by the Woodstow vestries of his own youth. A wilder boy tamed by love and loss. Your ma saved me, he admitted one night, poker in hand. Showed me God's not just fire and brimstone. Sometimes he's in the quiet. I returned the vulnerability, fragments of my hidden years, the terror of coming out. He listened, unblinking, then clasped my shoulder. Takes guts, son. More than I had at your age. Elias came back changed lighter. Somehow. The memorial, a exorcism of sorts. He brought me a dog tag replica, engraved for the living. We hung it on the bedpost. A talisman. Christmas Eve. We knelt in the back row again. The church aglow with candles. Carols swelling like waves. Pastor Reynolds' sermon veered unexpected. Love your neighbor not despite their sins, but through them. For in Christ, there are no outcasts. The congregation shifted, murmurs rippling, but Elias squeezed my hand. His kneel beside me, a vow renewed. Outside, snow fell soft as forgiveness, blanketing Willow Creek in possibility. Spring unfurled tentative, dogwoods blooming pink against the thaw, mirroring the flush on our cheeks as we walked hand in hand down Main Street defiant. Deliberate. Whispers followed, but fewer now. Mrs. Delaney even waved from her porch. A tentative bridge. Elias took a full-time gig at the garage, his laugh echoing through the bays, drawing customers who saw past the scars to the steady hand. Yet love's not linear. It loops. Testing resolve. May brought Elias' sister, Lila, unannounced a whirlwind of Appalachian twang and toddler chaos, her belly swelling with new life. She sized me up over sweet tea, eyes sharp as hawks. Heard you tame my wild brother. Good on ya. But don't think I won't bury you if you break him. We bonded over late-night porches, her tales of mountain kin weaving with mine of cornfield confessions. Elias always was the soft one, she said, rocking her boy. Hit it under bravado. You see that? Every day? I replied, and in her nod, kinship bloomed. Dad's evolution peaked at Lila's visit inviting her to church, where she belted hymns off-key, her son gurgling in the pew. Afterward, over pot roast, he raised a glass to family, blood or chosen. Elias choked on his water, eyes glistening. I covered his hand with mine under the table, the gesture unseen but felt. Summer circled back. The anniversary of that first meal marked with a road trip Cleveland's Pride Parade. Rainbows unfurling like banners of belonging. We marched, hands linked. The crowd's roar a balm to old wounds. Elias bought me a ring simple silver, etched with a compass slipping it on in a diner booth. Voice husky, not marriage. Not yet. But promise. Tears blurred the menu. Eternity. Then, back in Willow Creek, the town exhaled. Pastor Reynolds preached inclusion, his flock fracturing then reforming, stronger in diversity. Tommy Whitaker transferred out. Rumor had it to a desk job in Columbus. Dad and Elias bonded over tractor repairs. Mom knitting booties for Lila's babe. The back row remained ours, though now we sat front and center some Sundays. Unbowed. That July 12th. A year on. Elias knelt again, not in shadow, but spotlit by grace, pulling me down with him. Thank you, he whispered, for seeing me whole. My heart, once stolen, had recovered not unscathed, but remade, resilient. In Willow Creek's embrace, we'd turned kneeling into standing, secrets into songs. Love wasn't the absence of storms. It was the anchor holding through them. A revolution quiet as dawn, profound as forever. And in that pew, with his hand in mine, I knew we'd kneel 1,000 times more. Hearts entwined, unbreakable.